Scott Steiner versus Triple H at Royal Rumble 2003 for the heavyweight title was supposed to be a big match, but it bombed. Before I go into the why, Scott Steiner was wearing a purple thong. For real, a purple thong. Scott hadn't wrestled in a couple years because he was living out his WCW contract. He had been lifting weights, but his conditioning and his cardio was not there. So he was totally exhausted about 4 minutes into the match. He also had drop foot syndrome. When Scott wanted to go back to the WWE, he told Vince that his injury wasn't much of a problem anymore, and his conditioning was good. He basically said what he had to say to get a job. The other problem was that Triple H and Scott never really liked each other. And Scott and Ric Flair hated each other. Scott would humiliate Rick backstage and on TV. Triple H loved Ric Flair, so he could have been like, "Hey, Nature Boy, why don't we sabotage Scott?" "Yeah, Hunter, that sounds great, baby! Whoa!" Scott stated that Triple H sandbagged him in this match, not giving him any help and making himself heavy when he was picked up, causing Scott to get even more tired, exposing to the fans that Scott was not in shape. Scott gets booed like crazy, nobody wants to see their feud anymore, and his hype for this run is over. After the match, Scott was getting booed and he got on the second rope to hit a double bicep, reminding everybody, "Hey guys, look, I'm still Scott Steiner." They booed even louder, so he stopped flexing and got off the ropes. You could see in his face he was disappointed. Scott was very outspoken and didn't like butt kissers. Scott was a bit of a loose cannon and crazy, and he would tell you exactly what he thought about you, even if you were the boss, or, as he said in this case, the guy that's banging the boss's daughter. You could see why Triple H would feel threatened by Scott Steiner. So Scott returns to the WWE at Survivor Series 2002 and the crowd goes nuts. After that, he wrestled in some untelevised house shows to get ready for the Royal Rumble. And Scott did not look good in these matches. He looked like he was tired and it looked like he was hurt. I think this is when Triple H saw his opportunity to put Scott Steiner's hype on ice. This was also Triple H's revenge for his friend Ric Flair. Another theory is that maybe Vince McMahon was resentful towards Scott Steiner for lying to him and telling him that he was in better shape than he was, just so he could get a good paycheck. Taking Scott on his word, Vince put Scott and Triple H in a main event program together immediately. It's possible that Vince and Triple H came up with an idea to embarrass Scott at the Royal Rumble, because he lied to Vince about the condition he was in and not being hurt. Now, one of the only things that supports this theory is Triple H insisted that this match go 20 minutes. Why would Vince let this match go 20 minutes if he knew that Scott couldn't go? And when Vince saw what a disaster was unfolding in front of his eyes, why didn't he tell the ref, "Hey, tell them that they need to go home and end the match right now"? I don't know, but I do know that Triple H probably sandbagged Scott Steiner. Scott Steiner was absolutely exhausted and could barely stand in some points. This match had a huge build-up, and when it turned out the way that it did, fans were mad and they felt cheated. They didn't care to see the feud go on anymore. They already got fooled once, they weren't going to let themselves get fooled again. But they did try to continue the storyline for one more month, and they had a rematch at the next month's pay-per-view, No Way Out. It actually had Steiner on the poster of it. It was a better match. Scott didn't gas out. Anything that Scott did, the crowd booed like crazy. Triple H won, but still nobody really cared. The next pay-per-view was WrestleMania, and Scott Steiner wasn't even on the card, and it was obvious that Booker T replaced him. After this, Scott was relegated to the mid-card and left about a year later due to injury. I think the WWE misused Scott in 2003 because they didn't let Scott Steiner be Scott Steiner on the mic.
So as you're in the hospital, screaming in pain, your wife will be on her back, screaming my name.
That was the most entertaining thing about Scott Steiner.
Hailing from Dunkin' Donuts, from the great state of obesity,
The big bad booty daddy, Big Papa Pump, the promo god, who only cared about his peaks and his freaks.
until you call me the big bad booty daddy. When Big Papa Pump comes to town, all my hooches come around.
It worked so well because you didn't know if you could separate the character from the performer. But the WWE didn't have him do that. They had him follow the script and they had him say what they wanted him to say, and they really just tamed down the big bad booty daddy. Now I know the WWE doesn't want him cussing and saying all that stuff, but they could still get him to say the things that the fans expect him to say without him actually cussing.
Just for a minute, baby. Okay. You can get my room number if you want, baby. You want to feel like you be a real man? Huh? You want to kiss that? Kiss that, baby.
Scott on the mic alone would have been worth the money that the WWE paid for him for that year and a half.
But I can shave my ass ass and walk backwards and look better than your girlfriend.
In 2000-2001, the best part of WCW was Scott Steiner and his antics. Wrestling is entertainment, and he was more entertaining than most of the stuff that you see on TV now. Just go out there with some freaks, get in the ring, get on the mic, say some funny stuff, beat some guy up for 5 or 6 minutes, beat up security, flex, yell again, and then leave, and we're good. That's all the WWE had to do, and it would have been great, but they didn't do it. I really think that after Vince realized that Scott lied to him about the shape that he was in and the severity of his injury, that Scott was put in the doghouse by the WWE and they didn't have anything for him after that.